What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Live with RJ and Fish Tales. We have Mr. Hoover on tonight. If you don't know who Chad is, either you just started in fishing community or kayak fishing community, and you don't have the internet, because if you don't know who Chad is, you must not have the internet. And there's not really much of more of an intro we need to do for Chad. We already know that he's a goofy guy like us, serious when he needs to be serious, and just loves the fish. So that's all that matters. So, welcome tonight, Chad. Thanks for coming on, even though you're
Thanks for
sick,
having me,
and
bro.
who knows if you're gonna make it through the episode, but hopefully you do.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a recurring um, situation with a respiratory infection and pneumonia that I've been dealing with since sometime in November, and they think I've probably had it for a lot longer than that, and it's like I'm breathing Rice Krispies right now. So every now and then I'll have to kind of turn off to the side and cough, but I think we'll get through it.
Okay. Well, we'll get into. I see there's a lot of KBF stuff going on this year with you, but we'll get into that in a minute. I got a couple questions for you to get into, and dig into who really Chad is and everything else. But besides KBF for the year, what's it look like for you personally? Do you have any trips planned? Anything special like you may do off camera and not film, or anything you're going to do differently this year that you've been wanting to do, just haven't had a chance to?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go out west and do like a overland like camping trip at some point. Just kind of a you know like I went out there and filmed one time before, but kind of bucket list. I've been wanting to go back out there and just do it. Once we're at that point where the snow's melted off and it's not kind of nasty runoff from the snow. I want to go back and chase some of those tiger muskie in Ogden, Utah.
Okay.
Um, I want to go visit with a company that you're going to have on in a few weeks, Snake River Lockers, out in Idaho. Go try to do the big smallmouth in Idaho thing, and then also try to chase some sturgeon from the new XTR. I think it's an ideal watercraft for it. Going to be coming to your actual backyard, hooking up with a good friend of mine who's a country music singer who moved over, left Nashville, and kind of went on independent for a while. And now he's coming back around, signed a big record deal. But he's been a friend of mine since before he had a record deal, and I'm coming over there to fish with him and that area. I'm going to do some stuff with the Monster Kayak Club out of Santee Cooper, which is also right there in your backyard. And then going to do Florida eventually. I was supposed to be heading down to Drew's event this weekend, but went to the doctor on Friday, and he's like, "No, you should not be traveling." Was supposed to do Drew's event and then hang out in Florida for about 3 weeks and film, catch some big fish, and then go to a overland adventure expo called the Southeast Adventure Expo, or Save Expo, as they call it. And it looks like I may not even make that. I'm trying to be smart about getting well and getting healthy so that I can not just keep compounding the problem to where I go fish hard for a couple of days and then I'm wiped out for a week, or in this last instance, a couple times I've been out for a month. So luckily, it's kind of corresponded with winter when things are kind of slow anyway. It's really let me dial in some of the stuff with the business, with KBF, and with the content creation plan and things like that. So it's been a little bit of a blessing in disguise that way. Been doing a lot of reading and reevaluating, and I'm kind of doing both ends of the spectrum right now. I'm embracing this forward facing sonar and ultra advanced way of fishing, and then I'm doubling down on revisiting stuff like this, like knowing bass and getting back to kind of the re-education on some of the basic stuff that I pretty well know, but just kind of revisiting a lot of it, doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of reading on content creation and social media management. And there's some things that you and I both know that you can do that you'll get views. I just don't want to do it. Things that I've done in the past that get stupid views, I could chase, but they're just not me, and they're not fun, and they're not what I really want my brand to be. Um, and then amongst all of those trips, I really wanted to kind of, since I was shutting my trail down, I wanted to jump out there and do a bunch of trails this year, but I really just want to get away from the tournament stuff, and focus more on that's funny. Focus more on getting myself healthy, getting the flow down with Austin and I creating content, especially since he's getting in front of the camera more. With him getting in front of the camera more, I kind of want to start flipping the script where I get behind it some. A lot of people don't know this, but the way that I got into the outdoor industry is through photography. I was an outdoor photographer before I was anything else. I got good at photography. I learned from a guy in Virginia Beach that's one of the best photographers in the world, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he was like, if you teach me how to kayak fish, I'll teach you how to do photography. And so I did like a little bit of like almost like an internship under him, and I got really good at it. And at that time, you almost had to buy the high-end cameras to get the high-end shots. And so I invested in that equipment because I was, active duty military, and I really wanted to, embrace that part of my artistic side. And I fell in love with it, and I went batshit crazy with it for about 4 years. And within the first year and a half, I was getting a couple paying gigs here and there. And then a couple of relationships came along that I was able to parlay into sponsorships with the company, because they found out not only could I take photos, but I was also fishing. And then it just kind of became one of those things where I started doing some stuff behind the camera or in front of the camera. And I progressively did more and more stuff in front of the camera and less stuff behind the camera. And, working directly with my son, who has become a far better videographer or photographer than I ever was in a shorter period of time. And there's also a lot more tools available. Editing softwares are easier. Digital, photography is easier. You can damn near take as good of a photo with this thing nowadays as you used to be able to with some of the, $4,000 or $5,000 cameras that I had back in the day. And so I want to come full circle though, and then just embrace that artistic side. We're starting to learn. Probably shouldn't have taken us this long to figure it out, but the short form content does a lot better, and then the long form content does okay. But what I'd like to do is do more and more short form content, and then do like quarterly, almost like films, like a kayak fishing movies that are seasonal, that lets us flex that creative side and make that high end stuff, and then build it up with the shorter form content. So to answer your question without rambling for an hour, I'm really evaluating, what I truly enjoy doing that provides a value proposition to the person that's watching it, and then finding that balance between, because this as well as I do, but like in the modern world, there's 1,000 things being fed at people, and to get them to slow the scroll, to stop looking at something else, you have to get their attention, but then you have to provide a value proposition. Like, what does that person get for the 30 seconds to a minute to 10 minutes to 20 minutes that they're trading of their life to you for what they're watching? And then figuring out what that value proposition is. Is it information? Is it education? Is it an entertainment? And then if you can learn how to make your content hit 2 of the 3 or all 3 categories at one time, what I call infotainment or even like edutainment or whatever, then it's easier to get people to watch it, and it's more valuable, and they don't feel slighted. I think a lot of times people chase views with like clickbaity type things. And then what they don't realize is that there's no connection with you and that person. They watch that video because of the clickbait. So unless you do clickbait again, you're never getting that person back. And I'd prefer to have a relationship, build a community, build a family, build a core group of people that want to learn and want to share. And then it's we, not me and you. And that's really been my focus. I'm also pivoting in the type of events that I create. I'm not so much interested in trying to be an elite tournament series anymore. I want to do more rallies or get-togethers or things where we can get together as a community, where it's more about getting together than it is about competing. Still have a small competitive component to it because we're all deep down inside got a little bit of a competitive itch. I'm kind of using more of the formula of like a 5K or like a marathon, where a lot of people come and it's about completing whatever the challenge is versus competing in it. You know, if you go to like a 5K or a marathon, there might be a few people running around with their like nipples taped and tight running clothes and and all that stuff that really think they're competing, and then the rest are just there to finish. And so I really want to focus on that group that wants to finish and have fun and learn and share, and not so much the ones that are, putting Vaseline on their thighs and taping their nipples down. That's not the part of the sport that I want to serve. And so, you know, um, do I enjoy the kayak with two graphs on it and having all the information at my fingertips and building on the knowledge that I already have, and then using the tools that I already have built over 30 years to take my fishing to the next level? Absolutely. But I also understand that there's a crutch you can create if you rely on that too much and you don't have that cumulative foundation. So a lot of times when I'm watching these forward facing sonar or the future of fishing arguments, I can kind of see both sides. I come from the aviation industry. I was in the Navy. I was always been an early adopter of things. Um, so I understand that side of it, but I also understand the old school, like gray beard dude, like, Gen X type mindset of, you don't need all that stuff. And there's a happy balance somewhere. And I'm hoping that we can find that balance so we can promote the stuff to the folks that want to maximize their time on the water. And then we can also simultaneously say, you don't necessarily need all that stuff if you just want to go have, a good time. And there's a couple ways of looking at it. Um, I had a guy make a comment on one of my YouTube videos about forward facing sonar. He's like, yeah, I could see if I was fishing 5 or 6 days a week or 20 days out of the month, or if I was a professional needing that type of sonar. The flip side of that argument is if you only get a few hours to fish a week, something like that can give you the competitive advantage to catch more fish. So sometimes it's maybe even the other way around. If I got all week to figure them out and I can fish all day, every day, my chances of catching fish are better with nothing. So you just got to find that balance for what's good for you. And my goal over the next year is to develop that programming for my content that serves kind of all of those verticals. I know there's a saying, when you try to be everything to everybody, you end up being you end up being nothing to anyone. And so I don't want to go that route, but I do think that there's harmony in finding that balance. And I still just as much enjoy grabbing a bag of Cinco's, two hollow body frogs, dragging my kayak through the woods, and that's all I fish for, 10 hours on a summer day, as much as I enjoy backing a trailer down, unloading a kayak that's practically a mini bass boat, and going out and graphing with, structure scan, finding a brush pile or something, passing over it with 2D sonar, dropping a buoy, backing off and making long casts that I can now cut that in half with forward facing sonar. And I like map study. I like doing stuff at home on Google Earth or Google Earth Pro or Navionics. And I like taking that game plan and putting it together. There's just something about taking stuff that you use for hunting. And I know this is going to sound corny, but it's also like mission planning in the military. And with my background in the military of doing what I did and being out there on the tip of the spear and being around some of the really brilliant, combat minds, knowing the variables that you take into account, the research and recon and all that kind of stuff, and then taking that same approach to going fishing, where you do all of your recon, and then when you go out there, the battlefield is exactly what you expected it to be instead of going out there blind. So I enjoy all that, and so I'm kind of cyclic though. Like I've got a single dude's mentality, which is why I've never been very successful at relationships. Which means like I could eat the same thing every day for 2 weeks,
Hmm.
and then I'll get bored of it, and then I won't eat it again for 6 months. Right? I kind of fish the same way. I might go a month where I go throw hollow body frogs every single day out of a RS 117 or a river, where I take my PFD, one little small box of frogs, 2 bags of Cinco's as throwback lures, and 2 rods. And I might do that for 40 days. and then I get the itch, and then I go deep fishing, and I'm out there with, a $15,000 kayak setup, and then I'll do that for 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm trying to find better balance in myself as a human being, and then try to cross that over into better balance as an angler, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
And it probably sounds a little hippie, a little foo-foo, a little touchy-feely, but that's kind of my goal this year is to, um, it sounds kind of corny, but like I'm learning myself better so that I can double down on the stuff that I'm good at and get away from the stuff that I'm not. And yeah, and I've had ADHD my whole life, but my dad stepped in when I was like middle school, like intermediate school, up about to go into high school, when they were wanting to put me on drugs, and he's like, "No, I don't think so." And I appreciated that because I didn't want my brain like shut down to like, throttle it back, because I enjoyed that competitive edge. And I have my entire adult life. I have honestly felt like it's like a, a blessing. But the older I get, I understand more and more it's a blessing and a curse, like where you can't shut your brain down, where you're constantly like go, 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 and you're overthinking things. So one of the things that I've learned is that if I read instead of watching stuff, like if I watch stuff on TV or on YouTube or on my phone, I can actively watch or actively listen and do other things. But if I pick up like an actual, like a physical book, like I've been doing, like this stuff right here, and get actual hard copies of it, you only do that thing, right? Because you're not passively listening to a book. And I had to get away from audiobooks. Like I consumed tons of audiobooks with all the miles I spent on the road over the last 10 years, because I've always appreciated learning, getting smarter, getting better at things. But I did the audiobooks again so I could multitask. One of the things I've kind of learned recently is that I like the old school, like magazine. Like I went and picked up a couple actual, like,
They're G rated, right? They're not rated R magazines, are they?
yeah, they're fishing rated. Like I picked up this Destinations magazine that's got your state. Oh no, that's South Alabama, not South Carolina. But it's got a lot. It's actually got a South Carolina article in here, but it's kind of one of those like adventure planning type things. And then I love reading this magazine. I've loved reading it for years. A lot of people don't realize this, but I'm actually a fly fisherman as well. And fly fishing's kind of been my fishing. But yeah, that's been me. I've been just trying to slow down and kind of appreciate things more. And I think when God realized like that's what I was trying to do, he said, "Here, let me help you." Bam, there's pneumonia, bruh. You're going to have to slow down whether you want to or not. And so it's really kind of locked me in, and as bad as I hate to say it, it's actually kind of took me being the 800-pound gorilla on Austin's back, like, let's go, 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 create content, was giving him some freedom to go out and fish and create his own content and that kind of thing. And, I've had a lot of people text me saying, "Dude, your son's becoming a hammer." And I'm like, no, that dude's been a hammer since he was like 15, 16. He's just always enjoyed being subordinate to other people and becoming an information sponge. And then I say, "Hey, go out there and fish by yourself and go create some content." And then he's texting me pictures of 20, 22, 23, 23, 22. "Hey, I got another 7. I got another 6. I got another 8. Like the dude's a hammer. So, probably pushed him a little too hard for a few years. But we've got a really good harmony now. We've got a pretty good symbiotic relationship. But the goal this year is for there to be almost like a shared spotlight where I bring him in front of the camera quite a bit. And we're actually going to launch a podcast later this year. I'm not going to rush it like I have in the past. I'm going to wait till everything's right, but we're going to call it the OG and FNG podcast. And FNG in the military stands for effing new guy. And so he's going to be the effing new guy and I'm going to be the old guy. And we're going to have conversations about fishing and life and politics and all the things you're not supposed to talk about on a fishing podcast, which is why it's not going to be a fishing podcast. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a everything podcast with some fishing. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of what's been going on, you know.
Okay, that's cool. So as far as your kayaks, since you said you're like you'll do 3 weeks there, 4 weeks with that, what are you gonna run primarily this year? Are you just gonna go between everything, or you think you're gonna run the XTR all year, or what do you think you're gonna? Or what? Let me rephrase that. What are you gonna probably use the most this year? You think?
I would guess that by virtue of it being my job, I'll probably create a disproportionate amount of content from the XTR
Hmm.
because it's the new shiny new thing. It's the product that gets views. It's the product that's kind of bridging that gap between kind of tiny boat nation and kayaks, and it's comfortable. It's easy to film from. Um, it's easy to put veterans in to do the thing that we do.
Hmm.
That we both do to get veterans in the water. Um, Personally, like if you said, what would you fish out of if you didn't have anything else to do this year? I would say I would probably be split. I'd probably be split 50-50, where I was either in the Power or the XTR, because I love the Power. The Power is a fantastic watercraft, and it's still at that threshold where it's manageable without a trailer. It's manageable without, being a two-person operation to move it around. You can still get into really tight places. You can get into rivers with it and things like that. And not that you can't take the PWR or the XTR to some rivers, but it's not really a riverboat. And if you've got a unprepared takeout, it's going to be a mofo to get it out. Now, I'm going to do that. I got a winch on the front of my truck, and I'm gonna hook it to the front handle that Catch made, and I'm gonna drag that bitch up a mountain, and I'm gonna do those things for the adventure component of it. But the average person doesn't have a truck with a winch and all that gear, and they don't have the ability to have multiple kayaks. And so if I wasn't filming and I was just fishing the way I want to fish, I would probably spend
New canoe, unlimited.
50%, 50%, 50% or more of my time in either the river or the RS-117, and then about the other 50% split between either the Power or the XTR. And most people are going to go, "Holy crap, that's an expensive kayak to have to only fish a half or a quarter of the time." But I much prefer being in backwaters and in isolated pockets and in places that others can't catch them or others can't. And I feel like the pendulum should start to swing in the next 2 to 3 years back in the direction of making lighter, more manageable. Um, Not that there's not affordable watercraft now. I still talk about this all the time. There's more inexpensive kayaks now than when I started 30 years ago, even dollar for dollar, not just like the time, adjusted for the times, but there was less thousand or less sub $1,000 fishing kayaks when I started 30 years ago than there are now. There was less under 500. So, but I just thoroughly enjoy going out there. And I know this is going to sound stupid, and maybe only people that can relate, but if you ask me what my favorite sound in the world is, it's probably that sound of lily pads that scrape down the side of plastic on a kayak. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know the sound.
Like if there's an opposite of nails on the chalkboard, you know how nails on the chalkboard is like universally known as the things that make you uncomfortable? That sound is the opposite of that. It literally makes my adrenaline pump. It changes my outlook. I get an endorphin release from it. And I don't know, man. It's been that thing that calls me more than anything else. Like I like paddling in slop, where you got to turn your paddle upside down and grab it and more dig and pull your way through, because I love that concept of working hard to get somewhere, and then when you get there the reward is you're where somebody else isn't or will probably ever be. you know I don't like pulling up on a spot on Lake Gunnersville and the lily pad or the duckweed has like 15,000 little lines in it where you could tell somebody has worked their frog. I like drawing those lines for the first time. So I like finding the blank canvases where those fish probably have never seen a lure or haven't seen a lure in a year or 2 years, like I said, or sometimes ever. Um, I I like pulling into a saltwater flat and watching tails from redfish pop up. Not that I moved into redfish, but I was already there and they moved in and their tails popped up, which means I'm so undetected that those redfish felt comfortable starting to tail around me instead of me stalking into a school that already had their tails out. I love that. Um, I love getting into a spot and getting still and just kind of hanging out, and then every animal starts to act normal. Like I routinely have heron wade up to me. One of the coolest things I've ever had happen 2 years ago is I backed my kayak up against this like you know how the roots of tulle, which a lot of people call lily pads, but tulle is the ones that come up out and turn up like an ear.
Yeah.
You know how they float up and they're these big like round log, the root clusters, and the wind will blow them together and it makes like a little island. Well, I backed up into one of them and I had a heron walk down this big floating mat, walked down, stepped onto the nose of my kayak, stepped off and kept going down the edge. Like I mean, he knew I was there because he stopped and kind of looked at me, and I like said, "Come on, bird," like I did the
Mm.
little thing, and it just walked right past me. I like being in a place where watching a deer kind of wade out into lily pads or tulle or something like that, and they're just sitting there. You can hear them slurping and chewing up the grass and stuff. So I'm not going to be the guy that's always out there on a bow mount on spot lock in 30 foot of water shaking a minnow. I'm not going to be the guy that's always running 5-6 miles an hour from spot to spot with the torpedo on the back. I love those things, but I love those things as part of what I do, not what I do, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And usually when the summer comes around, this is the only part that sucked about missing this fishing that I've missed in the winter. This is my favorite fishing when the other people aren't doing it. And so then I can go fish and exploit those places that are more public, that are more, you know, like you have them to yourself by virtue of other people won't brave the weather. Not so much that boats can't get there. They're not out at all. That's generally when I like to fish the community holes. That's generally when I like to go fish and learn the places when the cold weather has killed off the grass and stuff like that. So I've kind of missed out on that this year. But I've got enough of it to build on from, 10, 12 years of exploring these fisheries that I'm on that I can make it another season without it. But it would, every year I find some little hidden gem by virtue of the carpet being pulled back and you see the stain underneath the carpet. That's the only good analogy that I can come up with. And that part I've missed, but like I said, I've traded it for becoming an information sponge and really getting things dialed in for life. And it's also been kind of cool watching Austin kind of come into his own since I'm not out there. We're not out there every day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week filming, where he's the one primarily in charge of filming and not fishing. So that's been all part of the kind of a joint blessing in disguise. Um, and then there's river fishing. So honestly, man, the more I think about it, realistically, if I was left to my own devices, I'd probably be in like the river or the XT or the RS-117, a more inexpensive boat without a bunch of crap on it.
Yeah.
Probably like 75% of the time. You know, um, I mean, I kayak fished for probably 20 years, at least 18 or 19, before I ever had a depth finder on my kayak. Before I had a motor. No, I was probably 16 years. Yeah, probably about 15, 16 years before I got a motor. And then when I got the motor, I was one of the only people with a motor on the kayak. And I was kind of like that guy that everybody was like, "Ah, you're killing kayak fishing." And now it's kind of funny to see a lot of those same people are now, they're not just running motors, but they act like they were always for it when they were the biggest crap talkers about me using a motor back in the beginning. And I didn't really use it to fish as much back then as I do now. I used it to get to the fishing spot, and I usually raised it up and then just kayak fished.
Yeah.
They've gotten better and better now, where with slow RPM and better prop design, and especially with the bow mounts, you can actually use them to manage, boat position. It's kind of funny. 15 years ago, maybe not even that long ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, you very rarely saw a fishing kayak without an anchor trolley on it. And I was one of the first people to ever put an anchor trolley on my kayak. And when I owned my kayak shop, like putting anchor trolleys on was kind of like my forte. And I haven't put an anchor trolley on my own kayak in probably, golly, 8 years, 9 years. And seeing an anchor trolley on a kayak right now is like seeing an 8-track
Hmm.
in a vehicle. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I remember those. But you needed the anchor trolley to manage your boat position. Well, now you've got power poles and motors and anchor wizards and all of those things to manage your boat position. So you don't really need the anchor trolley as much as you used to.
Yeah. I mean, I made the anchor adapter thing I made myself for mine. I haven't thrown my anchor on my kayak in so long. I just use my motor, or
Yeah,
just use my paddle. I don't even use the anchor anymore. So I might
yeah.
even take that piece off my kayak, actually. So speaking of products with motors and everything, and you being who you are and where you get to go and see before we do, is there anything that you've seen lately that you can leak to the public that's coming out, or that you can safely leak and tell us about? Any new accessories? Any new stuff from all the brands that we purchase?
Not really. The latest one that I kind of knew about was the Eagle Eye from Lowrance,
Yeah.
but that was obviously released last year at ICAST. The one that I could probably talk about, where I'm not leaking anything that isn't already out there, but to say that there's very good conversations going about it, is there's going to be a gap, obviously, between when motor got shut down and the availability of the XI3, and then when the next kind of iteration of that comes along. But I think when that finally does come along, I think people are going to be really pleasantly surprised with it. And it's going to be one of those, yes, there was a period of unavailability, but it was worth it in the long run. I mean, it's unfortunate that people have built their idea of what boat they want, or they bought a fishing kayak with the idea of putting an XI3 on it later. Then there was like almost no availability of the XI3. Kind of sucks that like Wilderness Systems, for example, built that entire 128 around the concept of the bow mount trolling motor, and now there's like not an exact great solution for it. You can do the Xterra from Minn Kota, you can do some of the other stuff that's out there, but the XI3 was literally like that perfect model for that. And
Hmm.
so it kind of sucks that a company did that amount of investment into a product, and then it was a substantial portion of the design was built around working with that particular motor, and they really haven't pushed that boat out there yet. I think a lot of why they're still in pre-order, even though it's like knocking on the door of the season, is because of that uncertainty with the motor. um Pretty much everything else that I work on is like so like top secret that I can't even hint about it,
Yeah.
or there's already enough of a rumor about there that for the most part people can figure it out. There's nowhere near the amount of skunkworks type secrets that there used to be. I used to be really proud of getting kayaks and going only out fishing at night, or going into, wrapping them up and like it looks like a carpet roll or something, and going to some, you know, secret destination and spending 3 or 4 days testing them, or only going on remote rivers or remote lakes. And it's just not as much of that anymore. The design process has gotten so good that Let me think for a second. Um, I didn't get to get in a prototype river. I didn't get to get in a prototype power, and I didn't get in a prototype XTR. That's how good kayak design has gotten. But I also have worked with Hans for 15 years now. And so the process of him designing boats and boat designs have gotten so much better that the tools that are built into SolidWorks and some of the programs that you use, some of the plug-in analysis things are so good. And when you've got that much design experience that he's had, there's really not as much need for prototype testing as there used to be. And people don't realize it's kind of expensive to do the prototype, go test it, do a second edition, go test it. And also with the timeliness, with the timelines that we work on these days, there's really not that much time anymore like there used to be. You know, when we did the SS 127, I think I ended up in 4 different prototypes before that boat came out. And from what we ended up with to what a couple of the prototypes look like, you wouldn't even recognize the actual watercraft that we finally settled on, you know? Um, that was fun. That was a phase. I kind of like to get back to that, to be honest with you, because there are little things that you catch in that phase that you go, God, it would have been nice to figure this thing out in the prototype phase. And so I've been beseeching Big Adventures and Hans, look, the next boat we do, let's make a prototype. Let's go out and get 5 or 6 team guys together and let's go beat the crap out of it for a weekend or or 3 or 4 days to figure out those tiny little things that you can't really figure out in a vacuum. You know what I mean? You can't figure out on a computer screen looking at 3D models. You can do a lot with that. And the more experience we get, the more we can kind of know some of those things. But there's just little things. Like there's 3 or 4 little things on the XTR that I'm like, man, if we had got to prototype this and I was able to bring this to the table and we had enough time to implement it, it's a 10, 15, 20% improvement in the overall watercraft. For me, maybe. But definitely for me and people like me. Some of the stuff that we could have done from a modular integration standpoint. But that being said, this boat is such a blank canvas. You know what I mean? That it's like I think that Unlimited is now 6 years old. And so it's almost like there's a little bit of a, I don't want to say upgrade, but a kind of a continuation of that same kind of design concept. Um, I saw somebody, I saw somebody on one of the forums talk about how the XTR was a copy of the New Canoe Unlimited, and it really just shows people's narrow understanding of this sport because Hans and I had the tracks on a mount on top of a deck on the Attack 6 years before the New Canoe had it on the Unlimited, you know? So people come in and they see these things and they say, oh, this is a copy of that. It's because you have this recency bias of that's the most recent thing that you saw that looked that way. But I think that incrementally, when things improve, we all win, you know, because the next New Canoe will be better than the first New Canoe. The New Canoe after that will be better than the next one. Same thing with Bonafide. Same thing with, you know, every manufacturer out there. And I think that those that don't innovate and continue to innovate, we shot a video today where I give a big shout out to the Unlimited, to the concept of if you're trying to put a bunch of gear on your boat, if you're looking at batteries and graphs and motors, front or back or both, you need a boat with an adjustable seat because the biggest thing that you need to balance is your weight, not the other weight. You need to balance the other weight, but the most significant movement of weight that you can do on a watercraft is you. Even if you're like a tiny little, 150-pound man, that's still 150 pounds. There's nothing else you're putting on your kayak that's 150 pounds in one thing. And so that ability to trim the boat, I think really is the future of kayak fishing. We started it at Wilderness Systems, whatever that's been, 12, 14 years ago, 15 years ago. We continued it with Bonafide. Um, and then, New Canoe obviously did it. I'm trying to think of other brands that have a similar ability to move the weight of the seat. Even with the power, the PWR, you don't have as much ability to move the power fishing location, because I haven't sat in a low position in a fishing kayak in a good minute. Don't intend on it. Maybe like the RS-117 or the River. But yeah, even on the power, you don't have as much ability to move the vast majority of the weight, which is the angler. So you have to take your fixed position of your angler in the boat. You have to balance your weight around that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your constraint. I think the biggest initial appeal to the Wilderness Systems attack was that ability to move the angler. So if you put a bow mount on it, you can move back. If you put a stern mount on it, you can move forward. If you put a stern mount on it, you can put your batteries in the front. You put the bow mount on it, you could put your motors in the back, your batteries in the back, and you can balance things balance everything out. Low Life Angler just said that the XTR 130 is a copy of nothing, but really it is. Not to contradict what he's saying, I understand the premise of what he's saying. It's not a copy of anything. It's kind of a culmination of everything. It's a culmination of everything we've learned about this sport. It's a culmination of listening to what anglers want. It'd be nice to have this. It'd be nice to have a deck. It'd be nice to have this. Do I feel like I'm going to stand up on the deck of that boat as much as most people think they will? Probably not. But it's nice to have that option if I'm going to take that boat out and use it for flats fishing.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'll tell you straight up, the biggest benefit of that whole boat that I've seen yet is and I can't wait for this. There's summer days where the days are 17, 18 hours, and you drive 2 or 3 hours or an hour and a half or something to go fishing. And then when you get there, you're fishing in the morning. Then the middle of the day is just absolutely miserable. And then you fish the evening or you fish at night. And then you do really well during the peak times, but you got like 6 hours until the next peak time, and it's a lot of dead time. Sleeping in that boat has been like I've slept in that boat on a couple of trips where I didn't rent a hotel, and I just put a rope over a tree to my truck and put the tarp over it, and then just put my sleeping pad in the center of that boat. It's like literally a lot like the New Canoe Unlimited. I slept in that boat. I slept in a night fishing trip in the middle of in the middle of the water. You get under the seat and lay down in the middle of the cockpit. And then the ability for that boat, just like the Unlimited, to load it down and balance your load. You got lots of places to put gear, is huge. And so as much as I appreciate the sentiment of what Low Life Angler was saying, and I really do appreciate that. And that dude comments on my content so much that I appreciate the hell out of him. And I'm not disputing the point. I'm just trying to sharpen it a little bit, is that it's really not a copy of anything, but it is a culmination of everything. There's a little bit of like, I don't fault New Canoe for putting the track in their boat when the seat could adjust just because the attack did it, right? It's not one of those you copied us things. Like New Canoe was probably, let me think about it for a second. No, they were definitely the company that brought the Millennium seat concept to kayak fishing. Before them, Jackson was known for the company that brought the frame seat to the game, but it was actually Native that had the first frame seat on the Ultimate and on a couple of other boats. And actually, it wasn't even Native that did it first. It was a company called Diablo Kayaks out of Texas that not a lot of people are familiar with, but Diablo used to do these Larry chairs, these travel chairs on their kayaks, which was basically a stadium seat. And then they ultimately ended up having one made. So they were the first ones that had like a a true frame seat on their kayaks, and their kayaks were kind of like a hybrid between a sup and a kayak. Um, really well designed for fly fishing. I think Diablo's biggest problem is I think they were ahead of their time. Like they were made out of, thermoform instead of rotomolding. They were uh, very simplistic design, lightweight. People didn't trust the materials, a bit. Great concept, great design, great layout, great branding. I just think they were, if they came out now, they would do better than they did when they came out, 12, 15 years ago. Um, and I haven't talked to those guys in a long time. So, yeah, I don't think of things as copy, and I think of things as evolution. And you're evolving, and you're adding things that kayak anglers want, and you're carrying over things that kayak anglers already like. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of, it's almost like Ford saying, everybody copied the steering wheel. We had a steering wheel on our truck before everybody else, and they copied our steering wheel. I mean, there's only so much you can do with a plastic boat. It's got to be pointed at one end and sort of pointed at the other end. It's got to have handles. It's got to have a way to a seat to attach, and certain things are just going to somewhat look the same. But I do think that the XTR is more of a departure from the traditional kayak fishing design than anything else has been in probably 6 or 7 years. I think the Wilderness Systems Attack was kind of the first one to get away from it. I think New Canoe was kind of a continuation of that, and there was a pretty good gap. And then I think the XTR is that next kind of iteration, if you will. There are different types of people that like different types of things. I think if you're keep it simple, but you have a really basic, great canvas kind of a person, that New Canoe Unlimited is hard to beat. That's why I promote it. I mean, I'm sponsored by Bonafide, and I have the Unlimited Challenge. I buy New Canoe Unlimiteds to give away for Hal, just because, Blake took good care of me when I wasn't exclusive to Bonafide, and we did some stuff together. And I'm kind of that kind of guy. Like, if you're take care of me, I'm going to take care of you. So, I'm not out there creating content in the boats anymore, but I still have an ongoing New Canoe Unlimited Challenge where we buy and give away the New Canoe Unlimited as a prize for what we do. Because I think it's a great platform. And I like giving credit where credit's due. And they really did turn the corner on getting outside of your traditional, the front hatch goes here, the back hatch goes here, kind of a concept with that boat. And I think it got people. I think it was the best bow mount option on the market for probably. I honestly could probably say that the Unlimited probably is the reason that bow mounts took off the way that they did. I'm not saying that other people weren't trying them, they weren't slapping them on other boats, but probably the boat that did the best with the bow mounts was the Unlimited. Give credit to the Derek Brundles of the world and the guys that are out there making that concept popular. Nobody else was doing that at the time. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm trying to think. Old Town was more integrated in midship. Hobie has had problems, quite a bit with integrating the bow mount just because of the nose flex and stuff like that. And Duke and One Objective, Duke from Catch, and One Objective and other companies have done some things to shore that up. And I think that their new 2025 Hobie is supposed to fix some of those problems. But yeah, I honestly think that New Canoe pretty much led the charge in ushering in the bow mount. Like when we built the SS127, we built it to accommodate a bow mount, but we didn't test it with a bow mount. We didn't go out of our way to make sure that it You know what I'm saying? Like we just said, if you want to put a bow mount on it, you can. And it was kind of a happy accident that if you put a bow mount on that boat, it did pretty well. But it wasn't admittedly, it wasn't a major concern of ours in the design process. And I think that quite the opposite was true with Blake. You know, Blake has came out of the gate early on as one of the top manufacturers that really embraced motorization. Dude's been the only one taking gas motors and throwing them on his boats at trade shows. And, you know, from the beginning, he connected with Torpedo and, you know, developed a really good relationship with Newport before anybody else. And he's kind of always been on that leading edge of motorization. So yeah, you got to, you know, when you give credit where credit's due, I mean, I'll break my arm patting myself on the back as being the first guy that was out there like overtly promoting motors. And when I started, I was Teddy Roosevelt running up San Juan Hill, and when I look back, everybody was sitting on their horses saying, "Shit, I ain't getting shot at." But Blake was right there as soon as he came out of the gate. He wasn't, you know, mincing words, and was 100% on board with the motor thing. So I've always appreciated that about the New Canoe brand. And of the brands that have come along, I've had brands that have had great dealership relationships and great dealership support, and then they've strayed away from it and then come back and so on. But New Canoe's always had a really great take care of their dealers first, like a dealer first mentality, you know, and I appreciate that about them because there's been lots of brands that have gone the big box route, that have gone the route of not necessarily taking care of their dealers. And I think that some of those brands are starting to pay the piper when it comes to that. And I think that, you know, your dealers that New Canoe really took care of have kind of built a slow, steady, you know, following, almost cultish, to be honest with you. Like, you New Canoe guys are like a different breed. Like, you know, like the dudes that you see on the motorcycles with like the straps hanging off the ends that touch the ground, and when they lean, it sparks off the ground. And all. Like the motorcycle guys that are the most motorcycle is, I think, what New Canoe guys are in the kayak sport. You know, they're like
we're badass. I know.
it's like a damn cult. You know, practically. You know what I'm saying? So yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
as far as I got a few more questions before we get into KBF. I don't want to drag you out too far here, but just some stuff. Your reels and your poles this year. You still running Shimano stuff? You got anything in the works with any companies or anything that you're changing up as far as your normal gear? Everybody wants to know what Chad uses and you know all that stuff. So
So, you know, I've been a G Loomis and Shimano guy. It was actually my first, back to the photography thing, the first professional relationship I had was I worked in a fly shop at the time, and I
hmm
got to be good friends with the G Loomis rep, and I started taking these cool pictures. He saw them and was like, "Dude, I could connect you with G Loomis," and I shot a G Loomis catalog shoot right in my shop. I built a area to set it up and do the shot, and I did that. And then, you know, G Loomis was bought by Shimano very shortly after I started using them, but they didn't put it out publicly, and the companies operated independently. So I used Shimano reels, and I was a G Loomis guy.
yeah,
And then when G Loomis got brought under the fold, when they consolidated and they got rid of a lot of the marketing people, they basically told all the pro staffers to just start over. And I was kind of frustrated with that. So at the time, I had just moved to Tennessee. There was like this opportunity to buy into this rod company from a local gentleman, and I got involved in that. And that was a cool project. I learned a lot from it. It ran its course. I lost a bunch of money on the deal. Um, it hurt like polio, but I went back to G Loomis Shimano after that, you know, met its demise during COVID. And I just feel like I have a better relationship with the feel from Shimano and G Loomis rods because it's kind of what I've spent most of my life fishing with. I fished with yak rods last year
hmm
for, or not 24, but all of 23, just to kind of help them because I really, believed in what they were doing, still do, believe in the concept of like making rods specifically for kayak anglers, but I stand up as much as I sit down. And so that whole thing doesn't matter as much to me. I really think their stuff like their magnetic base and their leashing and some of that has as much of a place in the sport as their actual rods themselves. And so I used those, found that they were great. If you're in that range, you know, that $200 to $275 range, becoming kind of the rod snob that I am and being older and elbows and joints and wrists and things kind of hurt. And you're making, you know, 12, 1,500 casts a day, that, that $400 rod starts to pay for itself real quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're, when grams and ounces especially count. This year, I'm going to let the pendulum swing back in the other direction. I've actually gotten a couple of St. Croix rods that I ordered from American Legacy. I'm going to do some comparisons. I'm going to pick some brands that either friends use or are familiar with and just do a rod series on like ordering a rod from the internet without any knowledge of their brand and then evaluating their length, their power, their action, their logoing, their branding. And so I just did a series on Vexus rods or Vexen. I'm sorry. Vexus, the boats, VEXAN. Probably the best fit and finish and final product of any fishing rod in their price point that I've ever seen. So that's encouraging. One of the issues that we run into as kayak fishermen is the bottom 6 inches of our rods, especially if you stand your rods up in the rod holder a lot, end up standing in water. So then they're wet, then they're dry, then they're wet, then they're dry. So your cork swells up, it delaminates, or your end cap comes off. And Vexen has this really nice EVA foam butt cap with a little metal plate that so far I've found is a lot better for that. They've got a good spread, but they're not deep in their lineup. So I'm gonna get involved as best I can to help them out with that. They've got some good price point rods that I can buy to use for, you know, rods for heroes on the water and rods to give away to veterans. And so I'm excited about that relationship. Are they going to replace every rod that I use? Probably not, because I'm a rod snob and there's certain rods that I just are in my arsenal that I love, that I've added back to my arsenal because over the years I've had sponsorships and exclusivities that didn't allow me to use it. But like, I like my rod for this and I like this rod for that. I'm going to talk more about that this year. Man, I've gone full circle on Shimano reels 3 times. I've done Shimano, then I've gone to Lose and come back, and then I've gone to other reels and come back. The reel that's intriguing me right now that I borrowed one from a friend for a while just to see if the hype was worth it, is Baits. Like,
Yeah, it's all I fish, Chad. I have all the hundos.
I don't have a relationship with them.
And Casking.
I had a booth next to them at Red Crest last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally walked over to them and asked them, like, hey, do you guys do any like pro deals? And they're like, no. I was like, sweet. So I appreciated that because they have their standard. But I had what I needed at the time. Now, after my river accident last year when I lost 4 or 5 reels, and then I backed over 3 about a month after that, I now have a deficiency. So I'm looking and shopping for a couple of reel replacements. I actually plan on trying a few Cast King just because, you know, just being honest, like they offered me a deal 3 or 4 years ago and it wasn't right at the time. But they've increased their premium stuff now to where they've got a good spread. Gene did a deal with them from Fluke Master, and I played around with some of his rods when we've been out fishing, and I've been thoroughly impressed with some of the stuff that they're putting out. So I'll probably try a few of theirs. I'm going to do some rod reviews this year, and I'm going to be non-exclusive so that I'm not bound by having my hands tied behind my back. The only time I've ever had my hands tied behind my back is I truly believed that the company I'm working with has the best comprehensive solution of both models and species specific and technique specific and price points. And it's hard to argue that Shimano doesn't fit that. I mean, they got everything from like $49 rods to $1,000 rods and everything in between, and multi-species, multi-technique, and all that kind of stuff. But they're also a giant, so they're relatively difficult to work with. Their reels are just intuitive to me. They feel right in my hand. So when I've gone to Daiwas and when I've gone to the closest that I've come is Abu Garcia. I played around with a few Abus last year that I was like, these are pretty damn nice. And I played around with a couple of the, not necessarily the absolute highest end that Casking has, but some of those like 3/4 tier. They're not like the most expensive, but they're like one rung down. And I was pretty impressed with those, and the feel and the fit in my hand was great. But I'll probably be either primarily Shimano or at least partially Shimano forever, just because so far nobody's had enough breadth of different gear ratios and sizes and that kind of thing. The closest would probably be Abu. They're pure fishing, so they're big company. Second closest would probably be Daiwa. To something that would make me look. I do like that thumb brake on the flipping reel that they have. Thought it was a gimmick and a novelty at first, but it genuinely does have a pretty cool, especially since I do a lot of one-hand fishing in the kayak when I'm paddling with one arm and I'm doing that finger drag thing. But yeah, I'll primarily be Shimano from the reel standpoint this year. I'm going to experiment with a lot of different rods just so I can maybe convince somebody to buy one that they wouldn't have been familiar with, or save somebody from buying a rod that they would have bought because of the hype. And then I'm like, nah, it ain't worth it. You're better off with this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you could only fish one bait the rest of your life, what would it be?
Is this one of those all things considered, or is it one bait to catch the most fish? Is it one bait for the most fun way to catch fish? Is it like
No, it's like how about we re-say that? What's your favorite bait if that's the only one you could use the rest of your life to catch fish?
my favorite bait to catch fish on the frog?
Okay.
Period. Hands down. But if I was having to make a living or catch fish to eat or catch fish for content or numbers, the most versatile around the world, up and down the coast, border to border, coast to coast, conditions, regardless, it'd be a Cinco.
Okay.
If you said, okay, now you've got to catch everything, you can have unlimited configurations, but you can get one style of fishing, it'd be a jig, because I can swim a jig, skip a jig, deep fish a jig. Like the jig is probably one of the most underrated lures now. It's almost like crazy how the bladed jig and Texas rigs and some of these things have almost kind of, I'm not saying that the jig has gone out of style, but it's not as big a staple as it used to be. So if I got to catch them, if I got one lure and you say you got to go out and catch 50 fish and you're fishing for $1 million, I'm fishing with a Cinco.
Yeah.
If I got to catch a combination of big fish, small fish, fishing 30 foot of water, 20 foot of water, 10 foot of water, or way back up under a dock and all around effectiveness, it's a jig. But if you're saying you, Chad Hoover, for the way that you like to fish, and the only way you can fish the rest of your life, all things considered, I can't imagine not fishing a topwater frog. So if I was told to never, I would probably fish a topwater frog. I would fish when it's effective, and then I would probably take up like shit, I don't know, whatever people that don't fish, whatever they do, I'd probably pickleball or some shit during the times that a frog just ain't good.
Hey, pickleball is fun.
But a frog is like by far my like favorite way to catch big fish, especially. But it's my favorite way to catch a fish. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like even with other types of topwaters, whopper ploppers, walk the dog baits, and those are all fun. But The frog is just, I don't know, it's the best,
Okay, good
you know.
answer. So I'm going to kind of merge some of these questions because if I ask you every one, we'll be on here for 4 hours. So we know, and most people know who follow KBF, that there's changes this year, and you got the advisory board. Most of everybody knows that now, and that's a good idea that you did that. And you pretty much have virtual tournaments this year, primarily. Uh, what do you think you're going to go with that? Do you think you'll ever bring back the in-person events, or you think financially it's better for you to stay virtual? And the way the kayak, industry is right now, it's kind of like that, not plateaued. And we've all talked about it, but kind of this, just putting along here. And some of those in-person events have slowly died off. Do you think you're going to stick to just virtual this year, next year, or do you think you're going to bring them back yourself? And where do you see the national in-person events being in the next 5 years as well? So I'm going to kind of merge some of those questions together.
I'm still having live events. I mean, we're still having the national championship and the
Yeah,
challenge
yeah.
series championship and the 10. So, I mean, realistically, when you think about it, Bass has 5 events. I have 3. So it's not
Hmm.
like we're really that far apart.
Yeah.
Um, I can't see myself doing a national trail again.
Hmm.
What I can see happening is if this regional thing, which I think we put 6 good weeks of hard work in as a community and came up with the most balanced regions that anybody's ever come up with. But this year we're going to validate that through the regional challenge where it's free for members and it's just documenting the catches so we can look for any type of like disparities between states and regions and things like that. So the ultimate goal is to have live in-person regional events within the next 3 years. So those
Okay.
that'll be 15 tournaments nationwide, plus the national championship, plus the Challenge Series championship, plus the 10. So much like when we started all of this stuff, I sat back and I waited from 2009 when I started the first ever online virtuals to 2012 when we had the first live tournament. I almost feel like I'm in that again. I'm in that phase of starting the virtuals and now I'm evaluating where KBF can best serve the community because that's always been my goal is where can KBF best serve the community. And then I feel like we need a flagship national tournament series, and I feel like Bass has the most resources. They have the most name recognition in the sport, and they have the media platform and all those other things. Whether they take it and do with it what we want them to do as kayak fishermen to get competitive kayak fishing where it needs to go is still yet to be seen. I think that if the Bass Nation state things took off like they were supposed to do, and then you had the local, then regional, then national thing, it would be the perfect scenario. I don't think it's done as good at the club level as it could. The national level is cool, but I almost feel like that the national trails, because there's only one, are so spread out that it's really hard for any one region to get truly vested in it because you got to go travel so far to go to the other minimum number to be qualified for Angler of the Year. So I almost feel like it's kind of like an open concept. There's opens around the country. If you qualify for their national championship, go to their national championship, get a chance to hoist a blue trophy. There's something iconic about that blue trophy. But I'd like to see Bass be closer to what Hobie was. Don't go so far as to do what I did, which is too many events. But what I feel like is happening is back when I started, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. So people were traveling because of the opportunity. Now there's more opportunity close to home. So you don't necessarily have to travel as far. So therefore you get your itch scratched locally. So I'm trying to meet anglers where they are and give
Hmm.
them an opportunity to increase their opportunities by stacking on top of what they're already doing. This is a stupid analogy, but I'll use it because I used it the other day when explaining this to somebody. I said, back in the day, you used to go get a big pot or something and you would go get water and bring it back to your house before there was indoor plumbing or before there's plumbing. So you had to travel a lot more to get water. And now you can just walk over to the spigot and turn it on and get your water. So now people don't have to go to the creek anymore. They can just walk to their spigot, so they can get that local trail, that regional thing, and they can get that itch scratch. So what I want to give anglers the opportunity to do is to go from just fishing to go ahead to have that opportunity to go bigger if you want to. That's why I changed the state challenge series from state champion to angler of the year. So now we have a state angler of the year, then we'll have a regional angler of the year. Since you've got it up there, the state challenge series is now the only path to the 10. And my goal is to make the 10 the best kayak fishing event that there is in the sport. I already feel like it is. I feel like it's been the best events that have ever been done. In fact, most of the 10s have paid out more in total payouts than the TOCs or the national championships that Bass has held. So it's still a premium event, in my opinion. And I think we're going to take it to even the next level. But if you look at what we're doing with the Torqeedo Top 10, for example, and you look at what we're doing with the state record challenge this year for the state record challenge, we're using that to establish the state records. Next year, the goal is to do something similar to what we did when we launched KBF all the way back when I wrote the book, Kayak Bass Fishing. I'll show you this. So we literally had this all the way back in 2009, and it was called the state record chat. Whoops. I don't know if you can see that. The state record challenge right there. See that?
Mm-hmm.
State record challenge, and it was $20,000. And what we did is we went and bought one of those insurance policies that said, here's the likelihood, and you pay the premium for it. And if somebody breaks it, then they pay it out. So my goal this year with the state record challenge is to build that baseline, recognize state challenges for fish that are caught where all of the criteria was met, the identifier was right, the hand placement. Like if that picture would stand up to today's standards, then we'll recognize it as the record. If it isn't, we'll give it an honorable mention. We'll say this is the one to beat, but we won't recognize it as a state record. But we'll say that we know of at least a fish that big that's been caught. So to get the state record, you have to beat that size fish. And so next year we will have a true state record challenge. Now, there's something kind of cool about being able to keep up with your top 10 biggest fish. And there's also something pretty cool about looking at the top 10 fish that other people have caught around the country. And so if you click on that Torqeedo Top 10, when you guys are on the KBF page on Fishing Chaos, you'll see the way that it works. And last year it was really good and people loved it, but it was like, I can't compete with Florida, Texas, California. But that page got more views than all of the other pages we had combined. Fishing Chaos actually has analytics. And it's one of those things where people like to look at big fish pictures. It's like fish porn. And I like to look at big fish pictures. We all like to look at big fish pictures. That's just part of it. It's kind of one of the things that lets you know what's possible. So with that Torqeedo Top 10, I decided to make it $10, and you're competing for not just one Torqeedo motor, not just two Torqeedo motors, but three Torqeedo motor packages this year. And then we brought on another sponsor for a $5,000 trailer package. And so we're over $14,000 in prizes for that event for a $10 entry fee. And it's a $10 entry fee to have a leaderboard to keep up with your 10 biggest fish for the season. So we're going to focus on stuff like that. But what I'm going to do moving forward is to do a better job of dialing in what we've got and making it as good as we possibly can, making it as close to perfect as we can, instead of always doing new stuff. And so I think I've chased that new stuff mirage for too long early on. And now it's time to back up, do a little bit of a reinvention, go back to the things that worked really well. We had a regional series several years ago that was the most popular thing we've ever done. And I abandoned it when I went to the national thing because it was just too much for me to manage. So, yeah, I'm going to focus on that. Dave Water says, any thoughts of opening the Redfish series again? No. There's thoughts of it, but every time I think about it, I do like this and I slap my hand and say, stop, Chad, because I are a red fisherman. I got started kayak fishing in saltwater. I love red fishermen. I love saltwater fishing. I'm saying all of this so that I can say this enough that when I say what I'm about to say, it's less offensive. But red fishermen people in catch photo release are the hardest group of people to deal with in the industry. The people that fish redfish tournaments are 10 times more worried about other people's fish than their own. They're 10 times more worried about the other person. Well, what about I don't get those big of fish here, and we weren't big enough to do state by state and national. Oh, the slot doesn't work. Big fish doesn't work. Redfish don't get any bigger one place than they do the other. There just might be more of them. So a lot like the river fishing series is a great idea, and I love river fishing. River fishermen are like, that's why they're called river rats. River fishermen are like a little mini cult themselves, and they're just the hardest group to deal with because everything is anal. He's not really in a river. Hey, is this really a river? I spent more time on the phone trying to tell somebody I wrote the rule that says if you don't 100% know it's a river, it's not. But I still got 5 or 6 phone calls a day. In fact, you were judging for KBF back then, just dealing with that. Like, is it a river or is it not a river? Well, if you have to ask, then the answer is no. But people would still call me and go, well, I just want to know. I'm like, if you've got to ask, the answer is no. I understand what you're saying, but oh my God, dude, if you have to ask, the answer is no. And so the red fishing series, I spent a bunch of money on. I put up $5,000 for Angler of the Year, got 27 people to show up to the event. So probably not.
Okay.
We might have some redfish events. I don't think I'll bring, I mean, I went all in. I called it KSS. I had a series. I had graphics. I got decals made. I created a membership. Red fishermen might be the biggest, like adverse to a membership of any group I've ever seen in my life. It was almost like I was trying to take one of their children from them. What do I got to pay for a membership for? How you think we do this, bro? Like, how do you think we do the insurance, the trophies, and so it was just frustrating. You know what I'm saying? And part of the problem with red fishing is they're very tribal. The Louisiana redfish gang is not the Texas redfish gang, and the Florida redfish gang is not the Texas or Louisiana redfish gang. And you come around to the other side, and those redfish, it's very tribal, very secular, very like silo oriented. And if you have an event in one place but not the other ones, all the other ones revolt. Why is it not in Louisiana? Well, we can't always have it in Louisiana. So then when you have it in Louisiana, everybody else is like, why is it in Louisiana? So it's just this, it's like juggling knives, to be honest with you, man. So I said all that stuff in the beginning. Love me some redfish, love red fishermen. I think we're going to do some community events and some rallies in some places where there's an opportunity for redfish, but not so much focus on trying to create a redfish series or tour again.
Those are the perfect time to ask this question to you, since we know we love everybody who kayak fishes, but we know people can still be difficult. So in the future, as you kind of, regroup, get yourself where you want KBF to be, do you think that you'll step back, still be part of it, but maybe have a different face to it, or you'll still be the face? Basically, will you ever hand KBF off to somebody else? You still be part of it, maybe in the background, but then now Chad can go fish and go make content if he wants, just for YouTube, and not have to worry about the day-to-day stuff, and have somebody help you run it, or be more primarily the person running it, and you get to take a break and go do what you want to do, but still be in the back burner if there's anything that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, you want me to introduce you to him?
Give you a little tip with this new CPR thing. If you'll take your phone and turn it sideways, it'll be a lot
Yes,
easier to
I'm
get
grooming
frame,
said person right now.
to the water and
Okay.
back.
Family business, man.
Yeah.
We're all a family, but there's not another human being on this planet I can trust as much as that guy. And when he came on board, he took a major pay cut to do what we do. And I gave him, it doesn't sound like a lot, but people don't understand how this works. So I'll just say it. Like, I gave him a small percentage of ownership for each year of working for KBF that he completed. And we're now in year 3. So he gets up to 4 years of vesting to where he'll be a
Mm-hmm.
10% owner. So he got 2.5% a year for 4 years, and he'll be a 10% owner. And I hope he doesn't see this because I'm not ready for him to know this yet. But for where I was when I was 25 and where he is at 25, he's light years ahead of me. Um, he needs to learn a little temperance. He needs to learn that everybody's not like him. Same shit I had to learn. But he's a natural leader. He's naturally gifted in the world of figuring things out. He grew up with a dad that was an asshole that made him learn how to do man shit his whole life. I think we've lost a lot this last 2 generations, 3 generations of like not making young men be men.
Mm-hmm.
I wholeheartedly did not participate in the pussification of America, and he's the outcome. And so I think he's the most natural choice. But I'm also open to, if we get to the point where I could bring in, like, let's say a CEO or hire some outside party or something like that, to where me and him could fish more, where he didn't have to go through what I went through, that I'm also open to that. So to answer your question, I'm grooming my replacement as we speak. I've had a couple of health scares in the last 2 years, and especially in this last 3 or 4 months, where, I've had to have a real, when we're young, we think we're going to be here forever and we're invincible and all that kind of stuff. And when you take a hard look at mortality, it's like when you look it in the face, you got to start thinking about shit different. So I've had to start thinking about stuff different. And so, yeah, I'm grooming him to be that. But if not, so that together we can pick the right person to do it, so we can both focus on being the content creation arm of it, not necessarily the face of it per se. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
But at the same time, this board of directors, the advisory board are all also potential candidates. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if I was gun to the head, the old saying, gun to the head, you got to make a decision. Who's running KBF tomorrow? It would be the person I put in charge of the advisory board. It'd be Marty Hughes. Like, Marty Hughes would be the president of KBF tomorrow if I had to choose a successor. Like, if I got hospitalized right now and I was like out of commission, I'd call Marty up and say, hey, how do you feel about taking over as at least acting president until I'm back on my feet? Because he wouldn't be the chairman of the board if he wasn't also the guy that was going to be the guy that either chose or stepped up to be the person, in charge. I consider that board advisor person is almost like the VP of Kayak of KBF. And so I'm grooming Austin to take that job over because it's a family business. But, realistically, Marty Hughes, JT, Jeff Little, Garrett Wade, and even and I'm not saying this because she's less capable, but because she was the most recently added, but Lynn Yester, all of the people on the board could tomorrow be candidates for taking over this brand
Mm-hmm.
if needed. So yes, I have had to start thinking that way. Because I mean, you also got to look at it like this. I'm a polarizing person. Like, you either fucking like me or you don't. And I've tried the game of being less me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
That shit don't work. I'm me. You don't like me? You ain't got to. I hate it for you that somebody telling you the truth is not what you want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
But I refuse to be the guy that's going to blow some smoke up people's ass for $1. I've turned down more sponsorships than the vast majority of kayak anglers will ever have a shot at on principle alone. I've walked away from more than most will ever see in their life on principle alone. It's just kind of what's in me. You know what I'm saying? Like it's I don't know, man. I just can't, when I was married recently, this person tried to make me something I'm not, and I was freaking miserable. So I just can't do that shit again. I can't not be me. If you don't like it, you ain't got to, real simple. But I think that a Marty Hughes, a JT Hickman, a Jeff Little, an Austin Hoover, those people are more likable than me. Now that being said, a lot of that's got to do with the fact that I position myself to be the sheriff of kayak fishing, where I've got to be the rules enforcer and all that other stuff. I'm a genuinely likable guy if we're just out having fun and fishing and the veil is off and I don't got to be this thing. So I really don't want to be that anymore. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I saw myself spending my days arguing with stupid people because generally somebody breaks the rules, but then they want to argue with you about why the rule shouldn't be the way it is. But when you acknowledge the rules, when you signed up, you read it, right? Yeah. Yeah. But what?
Yeah.
It's pretty simple to you. It's pretty simple to me. You even were like, dude, why are you calling these? When you were judging, you were way more matter of fact than me. You were like, hey, bro. And I get it. That's kind of how you have to be. But I'm also this public figure, public face, and I've kind of got to balance the two. But I don't like balancing the two because I like matter of fact. I like blunt. Yeah. So
You like being like me.
Yeah, to answer your question, one of the things that I like most about people from up north is they don't pussyfoot around with a bunch of over the top niceties. And it's not that they're being assholes, it's just that they don't have time for it. Life moves at a faster pace. And when I was in the military, I honestly aligned more with that mindset than I did the Southern, oh man, come on, dude, ain't that big a deal, dude. That laid back Southern lackadaisical thing. Not everybody from the South is like that, but we have a predominance of take it easy. And, people in the North, especially in the cities, probably more of a city thing than it is a North and South thing, are just way more matter of fact, way more transactional, fast, I appreciate that. I appreciate that because you're not wasting my time. I'm not wasting yours. Boom, boom, boom. The facts are the facts. Let's move on,
That's it.
So, yeah. But I look forward to the day where somebody else is running this thing for sure.
Sounds like a plan. So, bucket list place to fish. You might have already done it since you've been around the world, but do you have anywhere else that you still want to get to, or is your bucket list and you never gotten there to fish?
So, two of the best places I've ever fished in my life is Belize, and I got to fish near the Seychelles, but in the Maldives Islands when I was in Singapore on a mission in the Navy, and we had a downtime, and I took my downtime to go do that instead of going to the bars like a lot of the folks. I want to go to the Amazon, and I want to go to the Seychelles. I want to, at some point before I die, I want to get back to those unbelievable crystal clear atolls, these little islands out there in the middle of the ocean where you're sight casting to giant fish, where you're pretty close to these islands and you're in shallow water, but you're basically out in the middle of the ocean, had a shot at a milkfish, smoked the drag on a couple of GTs or giant trevally. I'd love to do that again. And then also kind of to redo something that I've already done would be to go back to like Wollaston Lake or some of the northern lakes in Canada, doing the whole like musky pike. Cause I did it from a kayak because we were filming it and there was no like value in filming fly fishing. So I'd like to go back to those northern lakes and target those monster pike and muskie and do it with a fly rod.
Nice. So basically, your bucket list is you still want to go all over the place.
Not all over the place, but three specific things. I want to go.
Yeah.
I want to go to the Amazon. I've never been there. I got to do some jungle stuff when I was doing missions in Colombia. not South Carolina, Columbia, the country, in the Navy. And I saw some massive beauty and mixed in with all of the the BS that we were dealing with. I'd like to go back to the Seychelles, and I'd like to go back to the northern reaches of the tundra, up in northern Saskatchewan, to where you're kind of on the edge of inhabitability, really.
Mhm.
And the fish up there are just they act like they have never seen a lure, because they're only out of ice 4 or 5 months out of the year, and so it's just crazy how insane the fishing is up there. So those are kind of the three like bucket list things that I'd like to do, either over or for the first time. Seychelles, because I got close but didn't get to do it. Canada, because it's one of the coolest things that I've ever done. And then the Amazon for the total experience. Catch species I've never caught. I want to do the primitive, go down the river thing. I want to camp there. Like you know what I mean? Like I don't want to be in a 5-star lodge
Yeah.
going out. I want to go out and I want to do the Amazon thing. Yeah. So that'd be it.
Okay, well, I have one more question, but we'll answer. Here's a question for you, Chad. Did the partnership end with Fish USA? Because this guy's saying he got an email saying the
Yeah.
10% discount is no longer.
So if you're not on the KBF members only group, I strongly suggest you go to Facebook and search KBF members only. I've actually posted about this about a dozen times. Um, Fish USA is establishing its own rewards program, and when they get that finished, they're going to come back and say, "Hey, this is what we're offering to KBF members." But until then, there is no discount program. Part of the problem with Fish USA is you can go to their website and just as good a deal will pop up anytime as what the deal that they offer us was, other than the gift card. And so because of that, it doesn't make sense to do the 10% thing to make you sign up for all this crap when you could just go to their website and get 10% anytime. So if you want to shop Fish USA, just go sign up for their tackle text thing, or just go to their website and a little 10% pop-up thing will pop up.
Okay.
And then we partner with American Legacy to do the $25 per quarter deal. And so obviously we promote that. Fish USA is still a great company. It's just that they went through some changes, and it's the third time in the time that I work with them that they changed their system. And so they're revamping their system. They were trying to do it in quote unquote the off season, but their off season is not what we think of. Their biggest sellers ice fishing. Like that's the vast majority of where they make their money. They're in Erie, Pennsylvania. So between the Great Lakes species, the steelhead and October, November, December, and then the ice fishing season, that's when they're their busiest. So their off season is like January, February, March, when they've kind of sold as most of their ice fishing stuff. Now they're getting ready for the spring. So as soon as they come back to the table with a deal that is more than what they already offer on their website, then I'll do it again. But when they say, "Oh, we'll give KBF members 10%," it comes across as disingenuous when you go to the website and a thing pops up that says, "Sign up to our newsletter for 10% off." So it's not really a KBF exclusive deal. So for now, we have a much better deal with American Legacy. So that's who I've been promoting,
Yeah, I got to take advantage of that because I still haven't done it yet. Uh, Now, my last question to you, Chad, and I'll let you go. If you could fish with only one person, past or present, who would it be?
Well, it's a tough one because
I know.
obviously it'd be my son right now, but
You can say two. That's all right.
probably the last 10 years of his life, I was so busy building my brand and running around doing TV stuff and filming that I didn't get back home as much as I should have. And then by the time I realized that I should be doing it more, his health was failing and he didn't last much longer. But my pawpaw, my dad's dad, my grandpa on my mom's side was the more hunting, got me more into hunting. My grandpa on my dad's side got me more into fishing. So if I could fish with another person, it'd be him. It'd be my,
Okay.
because I just wish I'd have made a better effort when he was still here. So, if you guys out there that have somebody that's older, if you have that grandpa or uncle or person that means something to you, don't think, oh, there'll be plenty of time.
Yep.
Go fishing with them.
Absolutely. I'm sorry I hit a bad note on you there.
It's
I just,
all
I
good.
just, I just, I just been asking everybody that who's been coming on the live stream. Been asking that question.
No, that's a
Kind
good
of.
one. I don't get at a loss for words very often, so you got me.
All right. I finally got you to shut up.
Yeah, but I was actually thinking about him quite a bit last week, ironically enough, because me and Austin were arguing about something that him and I argued about when I was his age he and he was my age. And so I kind of started laughing because I remembered being Austin in the argument, and I remember my papa being me in the argument, and I just kind of started laughing, just shook my head. And ironically enough, in a video like 2 days ago, I was using his pocket knife, and I was talking about those mementos that you get from those guys. And I bite my fingernails when I'm nervous, and so when I was using that knife all day, like I went to bite my fingernails, and like the taste and the smell of my hand from the knife just like hit me. You know what I'm talking about? Like that thing that.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was like 12 years old again the first time I got that knife. And people might not understand this, but he cleaned a lot of crappie. We called him white perch with that knife. But he also sharpened his knife on a real whetstone, and he drank a lot of coffee. So he would spit on that whetstone and then, sharpen the knife on it. And then he would take his belt off, loop it around a banister, and he would strop his knife. So that knife smells like a combination of like coffee breath, crappy guts, and leather. And it's that combination that's uniquely him. So when I smelled that the other day, I about lost it. And then you just hit me with it again. So it's kind of a double whammy that I just thought about this like yesterday or the day before. No, I think about it a lot, but I mean, it profoundly hit me a couple of days ago with that getting caught off guard by that, that smell or that song or that thing that when you hear it or smell it or even a taste that takes you back to when you were in that moment. Like I felt like I was 18, 19 years old again when I smelled it, like looking up to him, like, like that old Randy Travis song that says, I thought that he walked on water.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
I appreciate you coming on tonight, Chad. It was nice for you to come by, even though you're sick. Hope you feel better soon and get better, so you can get your butt out there on the water. And when I get some time, I have to make some time to come down and visit you. And me and you have to get out in the water. I got both of us got to take time out of our lives to do that. And
Well, I'll be coming over your way probably sooner than that, so I'll hit you up when I'm coming that way.
okay.
We'll go hit
And
Murray and potentially Sandy Cooper and maybe even a couple sneaky spots in between.
I got a couple too.
Cool,
And
cool.
I appreciate everybody who stopped by tonight, commented on the live stream, and whoever watches this later on. I hope you guys enjoy it. And as always, be safe on the water, and I'll catch you on the water. I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Who's next Tuesday? Oh, JT. I got JT on next Tuesday at 7, which is what, February 25th. So next Tuesday at 7, we'll have JT on. So catch you guys later. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.